Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. Today I'm going over the Larry J. Sabato Crystal Ball initial 2022 rankings for the governor seats. So, going from west to east, we'll start off first with the state of Oregon. So Oregon, they give a lean Democrat characterization, and I think this is pretty fair. I believe it is a open seat this time. I don't think the incumbent governor is able to run for re-election because this would be her third term. So it would be a open seat, and I think Oregon has some Democratic DNA. However, I do think the Republicans, as they only lost last time by about 5%, I could see the Republicans running very potentially close in this race. I could see the Democrat maybe winning by 4%, 3 or 4%, honestly. It could get pretty close. I think that's pretty good. California, they list as likely D, not safety. This is interesting. This is dependent on if the recall election on Gavin Newsom, how that goes. California is an overwhelmingly Democratic state. I would expect Gavin Newsom still to probably win a runoff election, but it's very, very interesting that it's likely D and not safety. Nevada, they give a lean D characterization. And personally, I think from what I've heard, Steve Sisolak has been better in terms of other Democratic governors on opening up. But I think a lot of people in Nevada might be upset. I think Nevada, honestly, it's kind of in between toss-up and lean D. So I think lean D is fine for now, but I honestly would feel comfortable playing Nevada in the toss-up column. Now the state of Arizona, toss-up. Yeah, this is no surprise. Incumbent Republican Governor Doug Ducey can't run again. It'll be an open primary. Democrats have really started to have a lot of momentum in the state of Arizona, voting for Biden and their two Democratic senators. So Arizona is definitely a pure toss-up. For Republicans, it depends on who the candidate is. And I think her name is Katie something. I'm blanking on her name. But the Secretary of State, I think Katie Hobbs might be her name, is the expected Democratic candidate who might run. If she runs, she's a very, very strong candidate to be the Democratic nominee for governor. I think she's a strong candidate. So the Republicans need a strong candidate as well. That could win statewide. And it's going to be interesting to see who they pick. Idaho and Wyoming, South Dakota and Nebraska are all safe for the Republican Party. I agree there. Nothing too notable. Colorado and New Mexico, they have as likely Democrat. And, I mean, I agree, but that kind of just shows how these states have shifted to the Democrats. They both voted for President Bush at least once. So it's very, very interesting to see that these states have trended to the Democrats so much. Maybe if they run a good Republican, it could get close, but I doubt it. It's probably going to stay in the Democratic column. The state of Alaska is a likely Republican state. I agree with that. Hawaii is a safe Democratic. Again, I agree with that. The state of Texas is a likely Republican state. This is interesting because Greg Abbott's very well, or most polling shows he's very well approved of. Beto O'Rourke is considering running. I actually did a video on that a few weeks ago. So if Beto O'Rourke runs, it'll be interesting to see if this state gets closer and this race gets closer than it otherwise would be. Oklahoma is safe for the Republicans. That makes sense. Kansas is a toss-up. Yeah, I mean, as long as the Republicans don't nominate Chris Kobach again, I would expect this race to be better for the Republicans. I think the current governor is not really disapproved of, so she's got a decent approval rating, but I still think she won last time because she kind of won in a fluke. She won with the plurality of the vote, and I think that the Republican nominee is not Chris Kobach. I think Kansas will probably go to the Republican Party, but I think a toss-up's a good characterization for right now. Arkansas is safe red. Iowa, likely red. Iowa, I agree with. Likely red is, I think, a very good characterization for it now. Minnesota is likely D. I'm still on the train that if Mike Lindell decides to run, I think that race could get very, very competitive. I know Mike Lindell has kind of been canceled and stuff, and the media's been going after him, but I think the people in Minnesota really like him and like his kind of success story. So I think if Mike Lindell decides to run, I think that race becomes at a minimum a lean D, maybe even a toss-up. The state of Wisconsin, a toss-up right now. Governor Tony Evers, I showed that Reince Priebus might be considering running for this race, and Tony Evers is only up 1% over a generic Republican. So this race is definitely a toss-up. Michigan, this is the state I disagree the most with. I think Michigan's a pure toss-up. I think a lot of people went after Gretchen Whitmer over her handling of COVID. A lot of people in her state are upset with her. If Michigan could run a good Republican, like in my opinion, I think John James, honestly, if he runs, that could be his potential first statewide victory. I think Gretchen Whitmer right now is on a toss-up, not a lean D. I think they might be overestimating her in this one. Illinois, likely D. I think Pritzker's in a good position to win again. That makes sense. Tennessee, Alabama, and South Carolina are safe. I agree with that. Georgia, a toss-up, absolutely. Brian Kemp, he's in a lot of hot water right now as it is, and if Stacey Abrams decides to run, we could see this race go lean Democrat very, very easily. So toss-up for now. I think that's a good characterization. If Stacey Abrams run, this is going to be a very, very interesting race to watch. Florida, likely R. I just did a video, and I have another one coming out. Ron DeSantis, very, very popular governor. He's in a great position for re-election. Could be the potential nominee in 2024. Lean Republican for Florida is a very, very good characterization for Ron DeSantis. State of Ohio, likely R. I think that if it's Mike DeWine in the general election, I think he wins. The real question will be if there's a strong Republican challenger in the primary. That may be the only chance a Republican doesn't win, in my opinion, in this race. Virginia, which their governor's race is coming up in 2021, actually. I'm going to be doing a separate video on Virginia in the coming days. But, Virginia, they give it a lean D characterization. That's interesting. It's likely going to be Terry McAuliffe as the Democrat. And I don't know if I'd be comfortable giving the Democrats lean D. I'd probably give them likely D, to be honest. I mean, if Ed Gillespie, who came very, very close to unseating Mark Warner in 2014, if he lost by about 11 points or so, or was it 9 points or so in 2017, I don't see how Amanda Chase or one of the other Republicans is going to get in a lean margin of under 5% or under 4%. I'd put Virginia in the likely column. Maryland, they have a lean D, so a flip from Governor Larry Hogan. Well, Larry Hogan's retiring, so they won't be able to run him again. Honestly, it makes sense. I mean, after 2 terms of one party, typically it'll flip back. Honestly, Maryland and the lean D, I think makes sense. New York is likely D is interesting. This obviously is contingent on Andrew Cuomo and what happens with him, if he resigns or not. I agree with that. New Jersey, likely, again, another state that'll be up in 2021. I would expect likely D to make more sense, but I think it's good characterization. Connecticut, I disagree. They have likely Democrat. I'd put it personally in lean Democrat. Connecticut, for some reason, they always vote Democrat at the national level and for senators, but governor's races in Connecticut are very, very close. I could very well see Connecticut getting decided by under 2 or 3% again. So I'd put Connecticut in lean. Rhode Island, I think likely D is honestly a pretty good characterization. I think Rhode Island will sometimes get close, but Connecticut will be closer. I think likely D for Rhode Island is a pretty good characterization. Massachusetts, likely R. I think this is pretty much contingent on if Charlie Baker decides to run again. If Charlie Baker decides to run, I'd expect him to win, honestly, in a safe margin. If Charlie Baker doesn't run, then I think this race goes to an instant toss-up. I know Lieutenant Governor Karen Polito is interested in running. Former 2018 Republican nominee Jeff Deals also expressed interest in running. So the Republicans have some strong candidates, but it's just Charlie Baker is so popular in the state. I just think it's going to be really, really hard for the Democrats to beat him. But if it's not Charlie Baker, this race, in my opinion, becomes a toss-up and could potentially become a lean Democratic seat, depending on who the Democrats nominate. It could be Attorney General Maura Healey. It could be former Representative Joe Kennedy. He could be a strong candidate. So Massachusetts is an interesting one to keep an eye on. New Hampshire, to me, is very, very interesting. It's the Chris Sununu show. What's he going to do? If Chris Sununu decides to run for senator in 2022, which I think is for the Republican Party in New Hampshire in Chris Sununu's best interest, polls have already started to show. There's another poll that just came out that Chris Sununu is up by 6 points. I think Chris Sununu, if he wants to be senator, he should run. He should run for senator in New Hampshire. I think that'd be very, very smart for him to do. Vermont, likely R. I think Phil Scott, if he runs for re-election, likely R is a very safe characterization. Lastly, on New Hampshire, I just want to mention one thing. If Chris Sununu does decide to run, I think toss-up to lean R, probably toss-up's more of a safer characterization. I don't know who the Democrats would run, but Republicans, maybe Kelly Ayotte looks into running. I don't know, I'd probably put in toss-up. Maine, they have Janet Mills in the lean Democratic column. Interesting characterization because Paul LePage, former governor, is running against Janet Mills, and a lot of people in Maine are upset about the COVID handling, so this could be a toss-up race, to be honest. However, Maine's ranked choice voting would likely make it harder for LePage to win this time around. So that's kind of my thoughts of the Sabato 2022 governor's rankings. Overall, I think they did a pretty good job on this. I think they might have over-favored Democrats a little bit, especially in Michigan, Nevada, Maine. I think they might have overvalued Democrats a little bit in those states. I think they did undervalue the Democrats in Virginia, though, to be honest. I think Virginia should go more likely for the Democrats, but overall, I think it's a very, very solid map. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Please remember to like this video, subscribe to my channel so you get notified when I post a new one. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.